Daniel Opoku to explain to us how we arrive at these figures. Daniel, good to have you again on joining us in the studio. How do we come by these figures? We say that it is too small, bearing in mind the cost of living, expenditure rises and all of that. 19 cities is small. How do we calculate these?
Right, so basically it's about this is just the minimum wage. A minimum wage simply means that that's a base that your employer is not supposed to pay you below.
Right.
So for instance, if you work in the private sector or you engage in businesses in the informal economy, it means that your employer should pay you a day 19 cities, some 97 pesos.
At least.
Right. So the employer decides to pay you more than 19 cities. Basically, that's the minimum of the minimum. But I want to look at the figures from 2015 up to 2025. Realize that just one city. Yes, because when they meet to negotiate, you have the employer telling the Ghana Employers Association telling you that they look at their operational costs and the expenditures that they make at the various workplaces. For that reason, when you increase the minimum wage, it also affects them. It becomes very difficult for them to operate. The obvious workers may have to be laid off. So they also look at that. Then from labor side, they also look at the cost of living. They look at inflation and also macroeconomic stability. So all these things are factored into the determination of them. After that, when they reach an amicable solution, that's when they agree on the figure. The figure is woefully inadequate, actually. From the perspective of workers, realize that the figure is woefully inadequate. But hey, that's what they have been able to agree. So just that you should be able to negotiate effectively with your employer to be able to increase from 19 cities, possibly that to pay you beyond 50 Ghana cedis a day or somewhere around 25 or up to 50 cedis a day. But if you take 19 cities, put all the computation together, then you are paid at the end of the month. So basically that's it. But it's a very difficult situation because they look at the general economic conditions before they were able to arrive at the figure.
Earlier in the morning, we're trying to feed ourselves with, let's say, 20 cities.
Right.
And then we got to know that, Charlie, it no go reach. It won't reach us anywhere. So this base pay, daily minimum wage, I should say, that also contributes to determining the base pay for public sector workers. Yesterday, a 10% increment was agreed between government and labor unions. Talk to us about it. How did it happen?
So I think 2 weeks ago, I reported that the minimum wage was likely to be at 10%.
Okay.
And I got a lot of bashing from all those who thought that I was just misled. But indeed, after the close of yesterday, they concluded on 10%. And the minimum wage serves as a base, if you're a finance minister, for you to project as to what labor will be asking for when you meet to discuss the base pay.
Okay.
Then you meet at the base pay level, then both government and organized labor agrees on 10%. So obviously, 10% for minimum wage, 10% for base pay. Now, they started the meeting on base pay last week, Friday.
Okay.
Labor tabled 60%.
60. Why?
Yes, that was last year they tabled 75. Because it's a negotiation. So it's just like going to the market to buy. So I'm selling this at 2 Ghana cedis. I can pay X amount of money. Labor tabled 60%.
Okay.
The finance minister came in and tabled 5%.
That's a whopping 55% difference.
Exactly. And then the meeting was postponed. They met on Monday. Labor moved from 60 to 40.
Okay, they reduced by 20%.
Exactly. Finance minister moved from 5% to 6%.
1%.
Yes, that. And then that meeting was inconclusive. They met on Tuesday. Yes, they met on Tuesday and then Wednesday as well. So they met really 2 days. Labor moved from 40 to 35.
Okay.
Finance minister was not able to move.
So he was still at 6%.
Then yesterday...
No, Daniel, hold on for me. So what influences the decision of labor to ask for these numbers?
Now, before they go into the main body to negotiate, they meet as a caucus. So let's table a higher figure. Definitely when you drop to a level playing ground. That will be...
So the 60% is because they were taking into consideration cost of living mainly.
Look at cost of living, price of goods on the market, so look at inflation, and look at the conditions of general conditions of service within the country. They look at all those things before
they come out with a figure, 60%.
Exactly.
And now eventually they got to 35%.
They got to 35.
Government still is at 6%.
Still at 6%.
Okay.
Yesterday was supposed to be the final day for them to conclude. Then suddenly, along the way, the president was coming in. So President Mahama stepped into the meeting went into the meeting with organized labor. Now it was between organized labor, finance minister, Minister of Employment and Jobs and Labor, then the President John Dramani Mahama. In the meeting, finance minister moved the figure from 6 to 8%.
Right.
Then labor dropped from 35 to 25. Then President Mahama told the finance minister, okay, then let's peg it at 10%. 10%, but labor unfortunately could not drop from 25 downwards. So obviously they may have to accept the 10 because the president pleaded with them. Looking at the state of the economy, presidents that should be given ample time to reshape the economy, to revive the economy, to rehabilitate the economy. Then all of them will come and share. So yes, the Labour obviously may have to agree to the term. But even though they were disappointed actually, they were not too happy with it. Because in 2021, 2022, they were giving 4%, 7%. And yesterday, another 10% consistently. So they appear very disappointed. But look at this one, Crosby. Whenever you have a president joining negotiation team, don't usually expect your figures to rise. The last time President Akufo-Addo stepped in, he gave Labour 4% and 7%. The last time President John Dramani Mahama stepped around 2014, he gave Labour 10% as cost of living allowance of 10%. Yesterday he went to the meeting, another 10%. So it tells you that clearly whenever you meet the president, your figures are very difficult to rise.
The presence of the president it had an effect on the negotiations.
It did. In fact, the president of the president really did the magic. I would say it was someone able to convince Labour, and also, for want of a better word, intimidated them. They couldn't negotiate further because president told you, I can afford 10%.
So president went from 8%.
Finance minister, president moved from the 8% to 10%.
To 10%.
So let's all.
And then Labour could not object
they
again.
Could not object.
What assurances did the president give
One,
Labour?
he told them that they should give him up to the end of this year to put the economy in shape. And also he talked about him setting up the emolument authority or emolument board, where we look at the general conditions, also look at the structure of monies that people take within this country. When everything improves, then obviously Labour is likely to benefit more. Even going forward, if everything should be in a very good condition, Labour should table 35%. He's ready to agree with them because obviously it also affects his pay. So those were the assurances he gave Labour. Labour yesterday very disappointingly walked out quietly, and nobody even was ready to speak to the media because they were so disappointed.
When the president came, did they? So you mentioned that some anticipated the president may arrive.
Exactly.
But did they like it when he came?
No, they did not, because you cannot sit and negotiate with the president.
Right.
You don't negotiate with the president.
It will intimidate you.
He will intimidate you. And you cannot look straight in the eyes of the president and tell him that, Mr. President, I will not accept this figure. And that will amount to some kind of disrespect.
I see.
Exactly. So they may have to keep quiet, listen to the president, table the 10%, and they concluded the meeting. All of them worked that way.
But what you're picking is that they are unhappy with the 10% increment.
Exactly. They look very, very disappointed. They are extremely unhappy with the 10% the government gave to them. Because the last year, 2024, the figure was around 23 and 25%.
Right.
Last year, from January to July, they were giving 23%. From July to December, we were giving 25%.
Okay.
Then 2025, you take 10%.
That's you're going down.
You're going down.
If you like, put the blame squarely on Labour that they could not negotiate well enough. Daniel, you disagree?
I wouldn't say they could not negotiate. Usually, when you go to the negotiation table, yes, you send your own figures. Obviously, you're not going to get everything, and so you do what you call trade-off. But your trade-off should be very careful.
But this one looks like they have traded off everything from 60 to 10.
Exactly. Last year you got 2023, they got 30%.
How much did they take there in 2023?
2023 was 25. 2023 was 30. 2024, 25. 2025, 10%. So you want to look at the quantum drop. But I think going forward, those who sit to negotiate, for instance, on the minimum wage, they should look at the cost of living and also inflation. When you take inflation to do the computations, you realize that even though you can have drop in the inflation figures, it will not necessarily translate to a drop in the general cost of living.
Right.
Yes. So inflation can drop 23, 22 out to single digits, but price of goods and services on the market will still be high.
Will still be there.
So I think experts, the economists and the government should be able to consider these things going forward.
This percentage that Labour has gotten that clearly they are unhappy about, what consequence are we likely to suffer, if any, going forward?
The only thing for them is for their subsequent negotiations. That's when they'll be able to move a bit higher. For now, it is done and sealed. There's nothing they can do. And also, possibly because of some allowances that are sector specific, for the education sector, they have their own allowance that they take. Then in that case, they will have some kind of slight increments in those areas. Apart from that, this is done and sealed. Unless you have the negotiations for 2026, that's when you can go beyond that. But you can trust Labour that when they take 10% this time around, their next negotiation, they'll go for something much higher.
Are we not likely to, experience a lot of strike actions because
if there should be any strike, then it will emanate from their membership.
Okay.
And when the strike begins from the membership, the leaders cannot control them. In that case, government must come in. Because it happened before. Around 2009, then Madam Betty Moredus was the Minister of Education. The late Honorable E.T. Mensah was in charge of employment and labor relations. Now labor and jobs and employment. There was a major strike on the teachers' front. It began at Osu, Presec. On this same condition of service about salary increment, right from Accra across the country, and they couldn't handle it. The leaders could not control them. Government had to organize a press conference to appeal to them to agree. So you should be careful that the members do not begin strike from the enterprise level, or that will be a problem for them, and they cannot handle it.
It is possible that they will, because
it can happen, because when they were given 4 and 7, 2021 they got 4, 2022 and 7%. A lot of them came under threat. I know the then Deputy Secretary General and also the Secretary General, they were attacked, they were abused, they were insulted, both on social media, everywhere. Even when now when you go to their offices, they have decided to mount cameras to monitoring those who come to their offices, because if you don't take care, you'll be attacked.
Right.
And that has been the major problem. So when you sit but negotiations are not easy. When you walk into negotiations, when you sit to negotiate with the employer, it's a very tough thing. So I know they will be very much angry, but they may have to just accept it.
Let's listen to what President John Dramani Mahama told Labour when he was negotiating with them, when he came there, and his presence caused all the change.
We've worked together for many years. One thing that is a cardinal principle for us, comrades, you know we are your natural allies, and we've worked together for many years. One thing that is a cardinal principle for us is to tell the truth at all times. We all knew the economy was in crisis, but some of the things I'm discovering myself, it's been a criminal handling of our economy. And Ghana is a crime scene, actually, because how a government can have been so reckless, I cannot understand. But we're faced with a reality, and our options are very few. We can behave like the ostrich and hide our heads in the sand and let the economy crash. But then what effect would it have on Ghanaian households and everybody? And so I've told him, I said, cut expenditure as much as you like. Even we ourselves in Office of Government Machinery cut as much of our budget as you like, because we all must make those sacrifices. A certain distrust of the political class has arisen, because it's like when everybody else is tightening their belts, the political class is loosening its belts. But I want to assure you that we're all going to tighten our belts, and there will be no wasteful expenditure. It is said that we create and share. And so let's start cooking the meal now so that we can share when we have created. But right now, the meal is not only insufficient, the cooking pot is even leaking. And so I'll just appeal to you that let's temper our demands for this year. And once we get out of the woods, we've set good targets to bring inflation down so that the cost of everything will come down. We've set targets to grow the economy, to make things better. And when the cake is big, then it's bigger, we'll share bigger. We are proposing an independent emoluments committee that would set the incomes for everybody from the president right down to the ordinary laborer. We are prepared to walk this journey with you, but I just appeal to you that let's reach agreement on this one so that we use this year as the year of correction. And then after we've corrected, we'll see how the economy continues to go. Once the economy moves in the direction that we are all hoping for, if we have an independent emoluments committee, maybe if you suggest 35%, I'll support you because it will affect comrades.